Good morning. It's great to see you. Happy Thursday. Hope your week is tripping along well. I'm glad to be back with you reading the Bible. I love connecting over the Holy Word. There's something about it just lifts us up in our day and challenges us, gives us a word maybe to enter. And maybe it's a word that's practical, like, I'm going to appreciate the abundance of the kingdom of God. Or maybe it's a word that's just open for your contemplation, right? Like Jesus' capacity as a master of molecules to divide bread and to divide fish. I mean, that's something worth pondering. If you're out and about, you're sitting, nobody really sits at stoplights anymore, do they? If you're taking a walk and your mind's wandering, wander into Jesus' capacity as the second person of the Trinity, capable of doing and understanding how the world works. Right? And there's promise. Maybe someday we will have the capacity to divide bread, right? And to be masters of molecules. We're already there, right? I mean, scientists are extraordinary in their capacity to do things on a subatomic level. I mean, really, right? That is as miraculous as dividing 5 loaves and 2 fish. But I want to say one other thing that I started to say yesterday, and I want to finish the idea. Because it's pretty important to understand. I talked about Herod Antipas over there in Tiberias, and I talked about the spies and stuff that are sitting within the community there, that Jesus, the 5,000 that are being fed. And you have to understand that not only were the powers to be, particularly Herod Antipas at this point, because the Romans and Pilate hadn't quite come to understand what's going on with Jesus. I don't know if they ever did with regards to his military capacity, but Antipas did, and probably the high priests did as well. And so if you have a person who has 5,000 followers, who are dedicated, right, and feel like their life, their life has been so vastly improved because of the presence of the person that they're following. And then this person can feed an army with 5 loaves and 2 fish. That is a thing to be feared, right? That is so dangerous. Imagine if Alexander the Great didn't need distribution lines. Imagine if they could march through villages, right, and beat the armies, but not pillage the communities, because they had 5 loaves and 2 fishes. Imagine what kind of army that would be. It's terrifying, and it was terrifying to Antipas and to people who were paying attention. Jesus could have ruled the world so easily. And indeed he did. Because it was more about time. It was less about time. And it was less about place and space. Jesus wasn't limited to the confines of a human temporal zone. He wasn't limited to the time right then. Jesus set out to conquer all time and all place. And so we can be invited in to the victory of Jesus Christ. And that's what, but people at the time, of course, that's hard to see. That's a hard concept to understand. And the people, as we see verse 15, chapter 6, when they realized what Jesus had done, they called him the prophet, and they sought to make him king. And Jesus hightailed it up into the mountains away to hide. I'm going to read on, chapter 6, verse 16. When evening came, his disciples went down to the sea. They got into a boat and started across the Sea of Capernaum. Sea of Galilee, Sea of Tiberias, same thing. Started across the sea to Capernaum. It was now dark, and Jesus had not yet come to them. The sea became rough because of strong wind. A strong wind was blowing. When they had rowed about 3 or 4 miles, they saw Jesus walking on the sea, coming near the boat, and they were terrified. And he said to them, "It is I, do not be afraid." Then they wanted to take him into the boat, and immediately the boat reached the land toward which they were going. Okay, so Jesus just feeds 5,000, and now he walks on water. And this is the second piece here of Jesus is being the master of the universe, right? Having the universe work for him for the good of all people. So the disciples left, and frankly, Jesus not staying with them there and going up into the mountains was an opportunity for them to leave safely, frankly, because the spies and the guards and Herod Antipas's folks were looking for Jesus, and if his disciples were with him, they ran the risk of being victimized or worse, killed by these folks. And so Jesus hides, and then he comes down and he walks across the water. And in other Gospels, this story takes place, and the disciples are terrified, right? And he seeks to sort of walk by them on the water. And then he sees them in their fear and anxiety, both by the storm, but also in seeing a guy walking on water. And he comes to the boat, and he gets in, and the boat moves instantly to the other side. And so I think this is just one more example of Jesus's profound understanding of how things work in the world. And the gift of Jesus's understanding was the inspiration to understand the world as Jesus did. You have to remember that the early scientists and early were monks, right? There were people of the church who were trying to understand the kingdom of God. They were trying to understand how Jesus walked on water. They were trying to understand how he divided loaves and fish. Right, so they started looking, and they followed, and they thought about how things work, and it has led to the extraordinary scientific accomplishments of today. Jesus inspired that. Singularly? No, I think you could argue not. But he certainly inspired many. And he's continued to feed us in our work to understand the kingdom of God. It's nice to see you. I'm glad you're here with me in the kingdom of God. Fiber optically, it's extraordinary the way Jesus ties us together through this new communication medium. I love you. You are in my prayers. Peace upon your soul.